Be strong.
Leon takes a very menacing stance in front of Syria, and with his sword in hand, he asks the guy once again to reveal his identity. Not surprisingly, Lunen's psycho brother decides to mess with him first. He starts laughing like a maniac, and then tells our boy that he should be the one to first introduce himself before asking someone else their name. This dude literally tells the angry swordsman that he shouldn't talk to him like that after his sudden intrusion. But as you can imagine, our boy isn't going to take that. Leon quickly hits back at the maniac, reminding him that he's the one who's blocking the path in such a narrow alley. His red eyes glare at Syria, laced with annoyance, and then he goes on to ask the guy if he's a thief or a robber. At this point, Lunen's brother also seems to be getting upset, probably because he's just been assumed to be a thief. Syria admits that he can see why Leon would interpret the situation that way, but then he makes it very clear that he's certainly not a robber. That's when he finally reveals that he's actually Lunen's older brother. Hearing this, Leon doesn't seem too surprised, but what he does notice is how traumatized and unsettled the poor girl behind him is. She's literally sitting on the floor, trembling and holding her head like someone that's fighting demons. It gets so bad that she starts groaning in pain, so at this point, our boy can't take it anymore. Leon faces Syria again, and then points out that Lunan looks very terrified, so much so that he even asks the guy if he's really her older brother. I mean, you don't expect him to just believe that with the current state of things. In response, the psycho just starts laughing awkwardly again, raising his hands in the air like a guilty person who's just been caught red-handed. Syria responds to our boy by saying that he may have gone too far with the prank. While pretending to be some kind of good older brother, this guy blatantly lies that he only pranked her because he was just so happy to see her after a long time. Unfortunately for him, Leon isn't buying any of that bullshit. It appears that he overheard most of the earlier conversation between the siblings because he knows that Syria squeezed Lunen's squirrel to death, and he certainly doesn't recognize that kind of action as a prank. After our boy calls the psycho brother out on his bullshit, Syria just starts laughing nervously again, surprised that the swordsman saw him when he was saying all of that. He then goes on to lie again, telling the angry swordsman that the squirrel was just a toy and not a real animal. Determined to prove his point, he shows Leon his empty palm to see that there's nothing in his hand, explaining that there's no way he'd kill a real squirrel. Unfortunately, all of his attempts to seem like a good guy are futile because our boy can see right through the facade of lies Syria has put up. With a bored expression on his face, he determines that the maniac already used his aura to burn away the blood that was on his gloves, just so he can look innocent. After telling all the lies, Syria suddenly changes the topic, and tells Leon that he only came to give his little sister some snacks, claiming that it's because he'll be gone for a while on a long-term mission. He says this while dropping a box on the ground, and the blonde swordsman watches him carefully the whole time. After dropping the box, Syria tells his terrified sister that she has a really nice friend, and then suggests that she and Leon stay as good friends. The weirdo suddenly turns around and starts walking away, telling her that he's sorry he went too far with his prank, and as he nonchalantly struts away from the scene, he tells her to stay healthy until the next time they meet. As Syria leaves, Leon just stares at him the whole time, because at the back of his mind, he feels that he knows the guy from somewhere. Just then, it finally comes to him, and he realizes that Lunen's psycho brother is the genius brother of House Sullian. He also knows that Syria is one of the 12 monsters that are expected to become the next generation's heavens of the continent. It turns out that the maniac is a big shot, because he's widely known as the Azure Sword, and now that Leon has come face to face with him, he remembers how he only heard about Syria before his reincarnation. This is his first time seeing the guy in the flesh, so he begins to recall how the guy was a madman who pretended to be a merciful hero. Leon believes that Syria carries the same disgusting stench that Darius does, and that's enough to tell how much he dislikes the guy. Anyway, our boy finally comes back to reality, and quickly checks on Lunan, who was already on the verge of losing her mind. Our hero gives the terrified girl a hand, and then tells her that it's time for them to go as he offers to see her off. Lunan finally accepts his offer, and after a while, the two arrive at her cart. Before she goes in, she thanks him for coming to say goodbye, and upon hearing this, Leon assures her that it's okay. He then says that she should go to bed early, reminding her that they'll be leaving early in the morning. After that, the cart leaves, and our boy stands on the street as it disappears into the distance. Meanwhile, inside the cart, we see Lunan holding the box her maniac brother left for her. When she gets home, she's still as moody as before. She curls up on her bed while the box of treats sits open on her bedside table. The snacks look pretty good, giving off a nice aroma, but Lunan can't care less about that. All she can think about is how her brother came again, and how he's just the same as before. In that moment, a memory from her childhood plays back in her mind. We see Lunan as a little girl, with a scratch mark on her hand. She holds her pet squirrel Ruby in her hands, and defends the woodland creatures, claiming that it only hurt her because it's pregnant and sensitive. She tries to tell her brother that she's perfectly fine and that the scratch doesn't hurt, But her words fall on deaf ears, because the next thing we see is the lifeless squirrel lying on the ground. After killing Ruby, Syria tells Lunan that she can't afford to get hurt because she belongs to him. He tells her never to get hurt in the future, saying that all she should ever do is just breathe. Alright, this is already a very sick thing to tell a kid. But just when you think it can't get any more twisted than that, this guy literally threatens to kill their parents if she tells them about what happened. Syria tells her that he doesn't even need the house, and that he'll destroy everything. He threatens to burn everyone except Lunan to death. After hearing such deadly promises, the poor girl finally accepts her fate, and knowing that someone will get hurt if she talks about him, she decides to keep everything to herself. From childhood, that became her mantra, as she believed that everything would be fine as long as she kept quiet. However, as she grew older, she realized something. She used to think that she was the only loner. She thought she was the only one who was suffering in silence, but that was until she found out that there was someone else to share her pain with. Someone who was just like her, and his name is Leon Zygarde. Lunan learned how kind he was, how much effort he made, and how much suffering he had endured. She watched him change how others looked at him through sheer effort, and it inspired her to do the same. Lunan admits that she did her best at his side to enact that change. But after everything she's done, it still looks like it's just not possible for her. As painful as this all seems, she just comforts herself by believing that it's okay as long as she continues to endure. We're suddenly taken to Jarton Village, the southernmost part of Zygarde's domain. Here, we see Lemmer telling his students that they'll be spending the night in the village. The trainees all look exhausted, so the instructor commends them for traveling through the dimensional door. He knows that they must be very tired, so he encourages them to have a good night's sleep, reminding them that it will be their last opportunity to relax before the mission. Of course, they're not exactly pleased by this news, but it's not like they have a choice. As they make their way into the village, a man welcomes them and tells them that he'll guide them to their rooms. Lemmer thanks the man for his hospitality, and as the scene changes, we see our boy chilling by a small fire inside his room. He suddenly thanks Wrath, but the blue creature doesn't get what he's talking about. That's when he reveals that he wouldn't have been able to notice something the previous day if it wasn't for Wrath's hint. Apparently, he didn't know that Syria was hiding his presence, and in a flashback, we see when Wrath noticed something strange. The blue guy just explains that he would definitely do that much for the bead ice cream girl. He's referring to Lunan in this case. Meanwhile, Leon thinks about what Syria said and how he won't return for a while since he's going on a long-term mission. However, he still feels that Lunan will stay the way she's been as long as the psycho is still her older brother. Seeing Leon so worried, Wrath asks for his body, promising to return it right after killing Syria. Our boy is taken aback by the sudden offer, so the blue guy reveals that the King of Essence returns twice the favor and 10 times the revenge. Lunan introduced him to the world called the Bead Ice Cream, and because of that, he's ready to do this much for her sake. Leon isn't a fan of the idea, and he even thinks that Wrath can't be serious, so he refuses to give his body. The King of Essence says that he's dead serious, but our boy tells him that it's still a no regardless. He explains that Syria has already created great trauma for Lunan, and believes that killing the guy won't change what the poor girl is going through. Wrath is disappointed when he hears this, and slightly irritated by his companion, but Leon thinks about how Lunan is the first child to ever care about him, in both his previous life and the current one. So, if anything bad happens to her, he's ready to actually kill the person responsible for it. 2 days after Lemmer and his students leave Zygarde's domain, they finally arrive at the village devastated by the snow tigers, and it's safe to say that the trainees don't look like they're ready for the mission ahead. Seeing the burned corpses littered all over the destroyed village, the trainees are so overwhelmed that they can't help but wonder why anyone would be so cruel as to do such a thing. As they walk into the place, Leon thinks about how cruel the snow tigers are, and from what he can see, it looks like they decapitated the people before burning them up. While other trainees are overwhelmed and terrified, he notices that Martha is completely unfazed by the horrible scenes in front of them. This makes our boy conclude that she must have either seen a lot of corpses in the past, or she's killed a lot of people herself. Leon is suddenly drawn out of his thoughts when he realizes something. He suddenly notices that Lunan isn't with the rest of the students, and he's immediately bothered by this. It turns out that the white-haired girl wandered away from the group, and as she reaches one of the houses in the village, she stumbles on a burnt corpse, which is so horrifying to her that she almost throws up. A while later, Lemmer finally gathers his students to address them. He informs them that the terrible scene they are witnessing right now was created by the Snow Tiger's bandits. He tells them to carve the scene in their minds so that they never forget, and urges them to be on their toes when they finally encounter the deadly bandits. After that, the red-haired elf pulls out something and shows it to his trainees. He tells them that it's called an inaudible whistle, and explains that it won't make any sound even when one blows on it. Lemmer reveals that the only person who can hear it is someone trained to do so, and then tells the kids that they ought to use it if something dangerous occurs. He gives them each their inaudible whistles and assures them that the supervising instructors will hear the sound and react immediately when the whistle is blown. Upon receiving her whistle, Lunan still seems scared, and that's about the same time Lemmer informs them that the swords of the instructors are merciless. However, he still encourages them to at least do whatever they can against the bandits before blowing the whistle. He tells them that they can try fighting the snow tigers without the help of instructors, and even urges them to waste no time in beheading the bandits if they get the chance. Hearing this, most of the students are motivated and pumped up for the mission, but Lunan still seems very afraid and she's dumbfounded too. While other trainees confirm that they understand all the instructions, she just remains in this dazed state, and that's when Lemmer tells them to divide themselves into groups under the top trainee's command. The elf reveals that Martha will be in Group A, while Baron will be in Group B. He explains that they'll all be moving in groups of 3 to 4 members for the mission, but as the other students are preparing to split up in groups, Lunan's mind trails off again. All of a sudden, she remembers what her brother told her when she was younger. She hears him telling her that she belongs to him just as she unsheathes her sword, and it instantly strikes fear into her. The memory plays back in her mind and she sees Surya telling her not to do anything dangerous because she might get hurt. He tells her that she just needs to keep breathing till the day he needs her, and vows to kill anyone that ever injures her. As this memory runs through her mind, she starts to spiral again, with a terrified look on her face. Thankfully, that's when our boy calls out to her to pull her out of her thoughts. He tells her to come with him with a warm smile on his face, but even though he's being very welcoming and kind, the traumatized girl hesitates to go with him. Lunan keeps her hands to herself, not sure what she should do, but as the scene changes, we see that she actually went along with him. Not surprisingly, they're both in the same group, and together they walk deeper into the snowy mountains in search of the bandits. They soon get to a point where they can see a mountain, so Leon wonders if that point is the summit of the Riveting mountain. He believes that the high ground should allow them to observe the situation below with ease. On top of that, he feels that it's easier for them to hide or run away. Leon thinks that the place is perfect for hiding, and as such, he concludes that the bandits won't be hiding there because it would be too obvious. Our boy believes that there's no way the snow tigers should pick such an obvious hiding spot when they know that they have many pursuers looking for them. He knows that they must have already taken into consideration that the trainees will predict their hiding spot. While our boy is pondering on this, we see that the bandits are already hiding in plain sight as the other trainees look for them in the snowy woods. After considering everything, Leon concludes that the only other choice the bandits have to hide themselves is on a nearby hill. Just looking at it, the place looks completely visible from the outside, but he knows that there's probably another hidden area inside. At this point, he makes up his mind to go there, so he tells Lunan to follow him there. The white-haired girl is stunned by his statement, and upon seeing the confusion all over her face, he says that they leave the forest to the other teams and check out the nearby hill. As you'd expect, she's a bit skeptical at first, but after a short moment of hesitation, she agrees to go with him. Even though she said she'll go with him, the look on her face is just too sad for him to ignore, and he's even dumbfounded when he sees her like that. That's about the same time that Wrath pops out again. The blue guy can clearly see that Leon is very concerned about the girl, so he asks our boy if he's not going to say anything to Lunan. All the while, Leon just stares at her feeling worried, and he responds to his companion by admitting that he doesn't even know what to tell her. Besides, it's a family matter, so he's not exactly an expert on such things. It makes him remember that he still doesn't even understand his emotions towards Sylvia, and so he feels that there's no way he can give any advice on family matters. However, he also knows what Syria has done to Lunan, so he thinks that he should be able to resolve the issue when he has the chance, even though it will be difficult to find the opportunity. Moving on, they arrive at the hill, and upon getting there, Leon realizes that it's just as he expected. It turns out that there's a hidden forest inside that can't be seen from the outside. He and Lunan quickly make their way down the hill, and as they jog down, he notices how deep the place is. It also looks like the human traces are hidden to prevent anyone from finding the bandits. Unfortunately for the snow tigers, this trick is only going to work against novices, and our genius swordsman is certainly not one. The trick won't work against him, and he knows this because you don't become the best assassin by simply killing the target. Tracking, probing, and gathering information are all important aspects tied to the job, and Leon has become the best in all of them over time. He knows that any ordinary hunter might be deceived by the facade, but it's all pointless against him. After checking the surroundings for clues, he turns back to Lunan and informs her that he thinks the snow tiger's hideout is nearby. He tells her to follow him quietly and asks that even her breathing should be silent, so she follows him stealthily, confirming that she understands the assignment. The duo advance into the snowy forest with their hands on their swords, ready to strike at any moment. Along the way, our boy spots a few bear traps, and concludes that it's just as he expected. They don't appear to have anything special except for a few traps at the entrance, and Leon believes that it's probably because they didn't expect anyone to even get that far. He can see all the traces they've left behind, and thinks that the bandits underestimated them. Soon, they get to the snow tiger's hideout, and at the entrance, he notices something behind the guards. It's a little boy tied up in the cave, so he wonders if the kid is a hostage. The hero also notices that the guards outside have very strong bodies, but even though they might be brutes, he can feel the aura coming from them, so he already knows that they're low-class warriors. At the same time, he notices another bulky man lying near the kid, and after observing him, our boy determines that he's actually good enough to make a living with a sword. Anyway, he concludes that all the bandits must be inside the cave, because he feels that there's no way they'd leave their hostage at a simple outpost. Leon knows that there are probably more than dozens of bandits in the hideout, so he contemplates blowing his inaudible whistle to call for backup. He knows that he could retreat first and join with the main force before attacking the snow tigers, but the hostage looks like he's in an extremely terrible condition. Seeing the sad, terrified boy tied up there, our genius swordsman fears that the hostage might freeze to death at this rate. The kid doesn't look like he can survive before the main force arrives to join the battle. At this point, he's torn and unsure of what he should do, but since the bandits still haven't sensed their presence, Leon decides that the best move is to save the hostage before they're caught, and then quietly take out the guards one by one. They both look at the kid from within the bushes where they're hiding, and Lunan gets so sad that she spaces out again. She keeps staring at the boy even after Leon starts moving, so when he notices that she's lost again, he calls out to her and calms her down, telling her not to worry too much, and assuring her that they can save the boy. However, he needs her help with this. He asks her to block the sound when he gives her the signal, claiming that he'll handle the rest from there. He asks Lunan if she can do this, and it just makes her wonder if she can finally change like him. With a determined look on her face, she tells him that she'll try. While they're coming up with a plan, one of the guards starts to feel sleepy, and starts to ask his colleague how long they have to stay with the hostage. Just then, Lunan appears in front of the guards, so they immediately demand to know who she is. However, she just responds by unleashing her aura to block the sound waves from their voice. They quickly realize that the sound from their voices isn't spreading, so they're surprised that she blocked it with her mana. As they stand within the sound trapping dome, wondering what a mana user is even doing there, Leon suddenly enters the scene, hoping to use this chance. Before dealing with the big guy near the hostage, he intends to first slay the two guards in front. Our boy unsheathes his sword and prepares to deal the killing blow, but the moment Lunan sees him looking so menacing, it triggers the haunting memories of her psycho brother. She begins to see the images of the dead squirrels from her childhood, and this causes her to break down again. This is bad for the plan, because she also loses control of the sound barrier. Our boy is horrified when he sees that the barrier was destroyed, so he wonders if her trauma was revived because of the situation. Lunan starts to freak out, breathing heavily, which makes our hero get the feeling that they're certainly going to get caught at this rate.